Hello, hello, hello. And it's Friday again. And we're at episode 15 of No Particular Reason. I am your host, Yanko, and we're here with our co host, Kerri Lewis, and our guest, Gabby. And we're
Hey.
excited to bring Gabby today to have some wonderful conversation. So, Gabby, it's the owner of the Living Life Lighter, and also a dedicated certified emotional code practitioner, which she'll talk about in a little bit in Intuitive Healer. Her full time business focuses on creating a nourishing and spiritual enriching space for others. With a passion of helping individuals achieve emotional, spiritual, and physical balance, Gabby uses her energy healing techniques to facilitate a powerful personal transformation. So, her ultimate goal is to empower others to reconnect with themselves on a deeper level and learn how to effortlessly improve their self care. So, Gabby, for no particular reason, you're here in the show. What are you inspired to talk about today? How we should start?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I always like to kick it back to the basics and talk about emotional baggage, which we are all very
Hmm.
familiar with. So we can definitely start there. But I always like to go back to what is emotional baggage? How do we create it? How is it stored? And all that kind of tidbit of information. And some of this may be new, some of this may be something that you're already familiar with, but essentially, on a basic level, whenever we're confronted with emotions, let's say frustration, taken for granted, abandonment, whatever the emotion is, we have two choices. The first is either to acknowledge the emotion, feel it out, let it ride the storm out. The second option is to bottle it up inside, repress it, save it for later, whatever that looks like, right? And more than likely, most of us were grown up in a mentality of, suck it up, buttercup, suppress your emotions, stop crying, this is not the right time to be feeling emotional. And so it is a program that we are so used to as a society, to basically bottle up those emotions and harbor them later. So, what's actually happening on a very energetic and basic level is essentially what those emotions are doing is, let's say it's frustration. You have that emotion, you bottle up it inside, and that ball of energy is actually the size of a tennis ball to a size of a cantaloupe. And what's happening is when you repress it, you're actually quite literally bottling it up inside and harboring it in all different spots of your body. And so what happens is with time, you start to accumulate more and more of those bottled up emotions, which causes mental issues, spiritual issues, physical, emotional, you name it. Pretty much all of it goes hand in hand. And we all may notice that the older we get, we may notice we have less energy. We may notice that our body misaligns more easily, has a harder time recovering. We may also notice that stress becomes more overwhelming, and a whole bunch of other symptoms can be caused just from creating these emotions. And, it's something that, say for instance, like a car, we get our car maintenance, we go get oil changes, we get our tires, changed out, all these things. As a society, we're taught, okay, you get a car, you maintenance it. However, not on a society norm are we taught to energetically cleanse ourselves. It's just not a thing. And so, what this work does as my certified emotion code practitioner, my job is essentially to locate that harbored emotion, find it, locate it, release it out of the body, and have the body become more in a neutral state so that we can see things, see life in a more neutral perspective rather than this over drawn out situation or thinking back from the past. So many benefits.
I love that so much. And, something that the reason why I love Yanko and align so deeply with Yanko is that he recognizes he adds value to people and helps them, unblock, belief systems and patterns of behavior. But also, he recognizes that the people still have to do the work afterwards, right? And
Right.
so the work you do with clientele, I imagine, not only helps them kind of release that emotional block, but it also encourages them to then what, start feeling their feelings in the moment, right? Which
Right.
is a practice and isn't easy to tap into in the beginning, especially in the society that we're brought up in, where you are supposed to suck it up. And yet, if you don't, then you're constantly creating those blocks within your body, which will manifest in physical and mental health issues and energetic, right? Even if
Hmm.
somebody watching isn't spiritual, the reality is we are all energy. And as you're trapping that energy, it is impacting the way you vibrate in this world. And that is impeding on your ability to connect with the people that you want to connect with in life, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the way, and just what you said too, like it's important that there is lifestyle updates to the process of this type of work. And just the same as Yanko, what I like to explain it as is like, yes, you're going to be a little bit more like, emotions are come with you. You're going to start to learn how to like deal with them head on. But I always like to describe it as like some emotions may be more overwhelming than others. It could be frustration, it could be taken for granted, whatever that emotion is. But what this work does is essentially it reduces the intensity. So let's say you deal with frustration and it's a level 10. Well, guess what? You actually don't need to deal with it on a level 10. You can deal with it on an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, frustration, I got this, like let it ride it out, let it feel it out. And that's something that really changes people's lives. And there's so much to it too. Like I'm sure Yanko sees this all the time. Like it could be past life related, it could be inherited, like from your genetic system. It could be, absorbed from other people's emotional baggage. There's many different ways that we can create these emotional burdens. But the reality is that we don't need to live it in such an overwhelming, consuming lifestyle. We can reduce things. And when it comes to like lifestyle updates, the way I like to describe it is I'm looking for someone that I'm ready to intersect in their lives at the right moment of time, meaning they're ready to implement those lifestyle changes. And I'm not looking for anything crazy either. Like if you're just doing one simple thing, maybe adding yoga to your practice, maybe listening to an audiobook of self-help, like whatever it is, like if you just slowly start to dig yourself out, you realize how much work that can cause.
Yeah.
And I mean, the concept is right. Like if you get 1% better each day, at the end of a full year, you're 365% better at the end of the year. So that's way more than just sitting and doing the same patterns over and over and over again.
Yeah. So good.
Right, but I think people think people see things linearly still. So if they're
Yeah.
not perceiving like they're gaining something, they think they're falling back. So they're not like
Yeah.
seeing it as like incremental thing that happens in their life. So that's something that I have to bring up to some of the clients that I work with, because like uh,
Yeah.
you you're gonna have like ups and downs, but it doesn't mean, oh, you did the work and then you fell down and now you have to go back up again and stress out about the whole thing. I think you have to like get it, implement it, like ground it back, and then go for the next level. Will you agree with that, or?
A million percent. We're so on the same page on that too. It's a cleanse and repeat process. And I always like to say, like, you're right. Like, a lot of people think that growth is like straight up. People look at me, right? They're like, oh, you got it all figured out. You're happy. You're joyful. Guess what? It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows the way I got here, Like, a lot of it is not a straight path up. A lot of it is peaks and valleys. But the difference is that as you progress and as we all evolve, we can all look back at our lives and say, I'm not the same person I was 5, 10 years ago. You can see that your peaks are way higher than where you were before, and your valleys are never as low as where you started. I can for sure say, even just 4 years ago, I'm never going to be that same version of myself. I'm more evolved. But again, there was that peaks and valley motion to get to that point, which at this point, I'm just like, bring it on, you know?
Well, you highlight two things. One, I love the fact, look, I've been doing this work since I was 14. I'm 44 years old now, right?
Mhm.
That's 30 years. And it still gets messy because that's
Yeah.
life. And as you're constantly expanding and evolving, you're going to face new opportunities to dive deeper into your subconscious patterns and behaviors so that you can pick apart those belief systems and free yourself from them for good. But I want to go back to something you touched upon, Gabby, is epigenetics and absorbing other people's energy, because I don't think we have enough conversation around the fact
Yeah.
that we are all entrenched in each other's energy all of the time. And as an addiction coach, right, I'm telling you, I would say 90% of the reason I work with people trying to numb out their feelings is because they're so highly intuitive as a young child. They're feeling all of this energy. There's no language around it. So then they think it's all of theirs. They don't know how to sit in that energy. And then they need to find a way to escape. Right.
Yeah.
Secondly, epigenetics. We see it even in World War II survivors from the Holocaust. Right. They weren't as emotionally impacted, the people who went through the Holocaust, as their children, because that trauma was stored and trapped, and then it was shared within the the linear lines of that family. And so
Mhm.
I love that you brought that up, and I'm curious, Yanko and Gabby, how do you guys help your clients and yourselves, right? Because we're all in this cesspool of energy,
Yes.
um, to delineate between your energy and other people's energy, and how to care for your energy when you are in energy that may make you feel some type of way.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it goes back to like, well, if you're talking about for me personally, like how I'm finding ancestrals baggage and stuff like that, it's like a 3-step process in the type of work that I do. The first step is that I connect to that person's energy field. So as an intuitive, I can read people's energy. I can see what's going on in their field of energy, see what's being harbored there. My second step here is muscle testing. Many different forms of muscle testing. All of it's intuitive at this point. Some days when I'm feeling a little lazy, I use my ring to ring method, but there's many different ways to muscle testing. And then my third and final step is my intention. So I use love, light, gratitude. Essentially, it's kind of like if you think of vibration or energies as vibration on a scale, you have like, anger, frustration, taken for granted, abandonment. Those are all lower vibrational energies. And then you got love, gratitude, authenticity. These are more higher up on that scale. And so what it is essentially taking out two different opposites, throwing in that intention, and it kicks out that old emotional baggage. But once it leaves, it never comes back. And it's a lot of like practice. It's a lot of training. It's something that we can all do. I think muscle testing is a basic concept that we all should be able to do and learn how to do.
Read.
But essentially, just by
Yeah.
muscle testing, I like to say I'm like the communicator, or I'm like the messenger woman. So I'm just bridging a conversation between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind of the client, so that they can start to understand what their body is holding on to that they may not have ever known, especially when it comes to inherited stuff. Like, how are you supposed to know that you're holding on to, let's say abandonment that comes from your grandpa side of the family? Like, that's just, again, not society taught, and it's not well known either. And it really can explain so many different things for so many different people.
Yep.
And it's just like learning how to like release that, but then also learning how to emotionally regulate yourself moving forward. But again, it's like that intensity level. Like, once you start letting go of it one by one by one, it's actually, some people are like, you know what, I'll keep my emotional baggage. It's a barrier, it shields me. And I'm like, great, you keep it. But just know, the more that you accumulate, the more it is a magnet for like energy. And
Whoop.
so it
Yep.
just keeps bringing it forward and forward. So if you want to keep it, fine, but you just don't be surprised if
Yep.
the past keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. you can bring it back and reduce the intensity and have a lot less of those experiences. Or at least if you do have those experiences, you have a lot more clear minds of being able to process those challenges.
Yeah. What about, so I want to touch upon what you say, Gabby, but I do want to give you the opportunity to share anything, any thoughts you have on my
Yeah.
question, Yanko.
I was gonna go next. I was gonna say I kind of do the same thing because like I help the clients bring what's unconscious in their deeper unconscious come conscious so they can transform it. And usually when people come in, they sort of have an idea what they think it is the problem that they're having because their mind it's playing games with them, programs and everything, and it makes decisions, says, oh, based on this and that and this and that, maybe I have this and maybe I should do this. But like usually almost 99% of the people that I see when they come in to see me and have like um, a problem, it's usually unconscious. And when something unconscious comes to the conscious and it's being worked on, um, then it's transformative. They're getting transformed and they're no longer seeing that issue or whatever they had. And then emotions can be tricky because like not everyone feels everything or they're aware of like their own emotions, so they can separate their own emotions from everybody else's emotions. So sometimes they might feel like, oh, this is me, but that's not like really them because like they're feeling somebody else because maybe they're highly intuitive and they're tuning into the surrounding and everything. So everything takes practice. It's not there's no magic. Like a lot of some people they look for a magic something somebody else to do the work for them. Like come in, help me get this done, but like I'm not willing to do the work. And it's kind of like interesting phenomenon. So you know when they're ready, and they're ready because they come in and they say, all right, I want to be over with this. Like let's get it over. Like how can you, like what can you do? Like can you show me something or teach me something, or like let's get this over with. Does that answer your question? Like
Yeah, I love that all, and I agree and very much aligned with much of what both of you guys are saying, and of course, working with people who generally operate from those really lower level vibrating energies, I can say wholeheartedly that people do believe that if they hold on to that emotional baggage, it protects them, but we all know, right? It keeps people in suffering. Two things I want to highlight to the audience, that Gabby said that I think is really critical and should be touched upon again is she's essentially referencing the map of, which was created by a prolific psychiatrist, and it is a measurement of our vibrations based on the emotion that we most often operate in. And the muscle testing, which is used by all different types of practitioners, whether it is, herbalists to certain natural medical doctors to people in the mental health field who are more aware of it, recognize that muscle testing is pretty much a fail proof way as long as you're coming from it altruistically, not having like an expected outcome, to know whether something serves you or not. And so that was actually how the map of consciousness was created, along with 20,000 different scientists. So I love that you highlighted that because I use that a lot in my work with people to give them permission to break free of guilt and suffering and shame, right?
Mm.
Because people who struggle with addiction often carry this deep seated shame and guilt and feel that they are deserving of carrying those feelings because of behaviors or experiences that they have been through in their past. And I use that as a reference point to say, yeah, you get to hold on to that for sure, but you're also going to attract more of those experiences. So you might as well trust me and let's just break free from this crap. So that way, not only are you done suffering from an experience that you haven't even been through in years, but also you get to start to experience more joy and peace,
Mhm.
which is, I think, all three of ours ultimate goal when it comes to the work we do with people.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think everyone feels they attract their people, they attract the client that's, resonating with them or not. And I think everything it's pretty much like we're not inventing the hot water again. I mean, it's been there for centuries. Everything it's like keep repeating itself. And I don't want to like make it sound like we're somewhere high and there's people that are low, and we're all like helping each other get home. There's not like we're more superior than other people because we're living in the bliss or we're like living better or whatever we think. Everyone lives their reality the way they are. And if their reality makes sense to them, that's okay. But if their reality it's shattered and it's not making sense anymore, reach out. Like ask for help and somebody will help you and get you to, experience something else that you're not like familiar with or you forget how to be that way.
Well,
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you some pushback on that, right? Because if we're going by energetic vibration, apathy is one of the most pervasive emotions that is around. And apathy is more of an acceptance of just this is my plight in life and I just have to deal with it. And so I 100% um agree with you, and we are all on our own journeys and we're all messy. So anybody in this community, like if you watch my stuff, you know I share all my stuff because I never want anybody to think that we have it figured out. We don't. However, you know, if your reality is not shattered, right, or you don't know what that reality it is that's being shattered, but you sit in suffering, if you sit in constant anxiety, if you're depressed, if you are constantly coming home and it's rinse, recycle and repeat your life, but you don't feel passion, if you don't feel joy, that's when I would encourage you to start to get curious. Because you know, for me, I was in car accident after like experience after experience, but I didn't realize that was the universe like trying to break what experiences I was having, right? And it wasn't until I started to recognize I didn't like how I felt more than my reality crashed within me that I started to seek different ways of identifying with myself and how I experienced life.
Yes. Yeah, and to kind of add to what you're saying too, like when we look at like trauma or emotional stress or anything like that, joy, excitement, like all of these things, even if you're looking at it from a vibrational standpoint, there is no good or bad. It's just different types of energy.
Yes.
And a lot of times I think
Hmm.
we have in our mind, it's like, oh, this is good experience or this is a bad experience. And we're always constantly measuring the two of them. But the reality
Yeah.
is that they're all, in a sense, benefiting us in one way or another, even if it may not feel like it in the moment. Because ultimately, what those challenges do to us is they're helping us release our karma. And I'm not talking about the traditional term of karma of good and bad karma. We're talking about unlearned or unprocessed lessons that have not been resolved in our life. And in my opinion, that's kind of why we're having these experiences to begin with, is because there's something that we want to learn from these experiences unconsciously, and we want to be able to develop ourselves and evolve ourselves past that, kind of like the phoenix, like rise above the ashes and rise from the ashes, because a lot of it is about, why is this pattern repeating in my life? Why does this keep happening to me? And if we keep saying like, oh, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me, it only gets us so far. And so you take a stop for a minute and you kind of look at it face on, head on, which is not an easy thing to do. But when you start to get to a point where you're like, you know what, I need to get off this roller coaster, and you look at it straight in the face, why does this keep happening to me? What am I supposed to learn from this? And it's like the concept of, like, if you want to think of it this way too, and this has helped me a lot, is thinking of things as, what do I prefer versus what do I not prefer? So when things go, arise, or things don't go our way, we can always look at it and say, okay, what is it that I don't prefer from this? Because this is valuable information for me to absorb and learn for myself, so that I know moving forward, I can take away what it is I don't prefer, and contribute that to ideally what it is that I do prefer. Because most of us don't have, a silver compass that points us in every direction at all of the single time, especially when we're going through all these stress and burdens. But if we at least take it as, you don't know exactly where I'm going, but I do know that I know what this is, what I prefer, and this is what I don't prefer. That becomes your kind of moral compass throughout your life. And eventually it brings you to things that you weren't even expecting, couldn't even imagine. And just like world of opportunities and creative imagination starts to like open up from just that thought kind of process.
Yeah. Yeah, I so love that you essentially said what I said in different words, which is
Mm-hmm.
come from a place of curiosity, not judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we judge an experience as good or bad, we limit our ability to learn the lesson or take away key insights that could help us in the future, where we would, might benefit from that, because we've now made like a statement or declaration around that experience, whether it serves us or not. So that's really so very powerful, and I love how you articulated that, Gabby.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can all
Yeah,
like slowly start to uncover. But I also don't want to diminish other people's experience too, because sometimes it really is fucking challenging, you know? And trust me,
yeah,
I am no stranger to that. And I love how you said, like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows over here. Like, it took a lot to get here, and it's a lot of ups and downs. But when you start to like get more comfortable with the downs, and you're like, you know what, this is serving me in some way, and I'm just going to accept the perspective that I prefer, you start to like ride that wave a little bit more gently, or like you start to like run into the shadows a little bit more, and then come out way more enlightened. And it's like, it's just a constant evolution of like learning more about yourself, essentially.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Yanko?
I was gonna say that I'm in the same I'm in the same space as you guys, and I love that because like even when I'm going through like a different types of authors and books, that they're all talking about the same thing, but they're just using a different language or different examples to explain the same idea to people. And the reason I brought this on before was because I know when I was on that place myself, I didn't know that something else existed. Almost like I forgot that that was there. It was just like, this is it. This is how it is. And then when I started to go to this process, I started to discover things that I kind of forget that even existed, if that makes any sense. And that's why I brought it up, because like you write about curiosity, but like if you're having your parents, because I mean your patterns, because you've been abroad in a certain way and you've been doing something for so long and you've been so into it, um most of the time you're not even operating from like really conscious level. You're just going in autopilot, and so you don't even like stop to pay attention to things that are happening to you. And I see that with a lot of people, like they can't even like have a conversation. Like when I'm out and about and I stop to talk to somebody, they started one thing, then the mind jumps because they have this untrained monkey mind that keeps jumping, and they start talking about one thing and then something else comes out, and then they talk about that and then something else comes out. And it's almost like you're going out to buy bread, but you come back with a Ferrari because you forgot your idea that you were going to buy bread, and then you come back with something else because your mind told you to, if that makes any sense. And that's why I
Yeah.
brought it up in the first place, because I just
Yeah,
wanted
and
to like share my experience with that.
I agree with you, I really do, but I think that like again, even for me, right? I mean, I was in how many car accidents and didn't recognize that that was an opportunity for me to shake up my experience, right? Like that, ugh. But I did know, right? Because everybody knows on some level whether they're suffering or not. And that's why I tell people, like, if you feel the ick, if you just feel like you're going home and it's just ick, or not even ick, but it, there's not that lust, that zest, that joy that you see other people have, because let's face it, all three of us operate at higher energy. So what does that mean? We attract people to us, right? Whether or not they are conscious of it or not, they tend to gravitate toward what we're doing, and it's because we're joyful. And so if anybody in this audience is like, oh, I just want a little bit more of how Yanko shows up, chill, cool as a cucumber, going with the flow, or as Gabby shows up wearing a tree, which I had to highlight to the community because I think that is so fun. Or me, then that's when you're like, oh, I'm just, let me ask some questions, let me see why they're so happy. And that's really, really important. So I love that you brought that up. And also I think we have just different experiences too. And it took me just to recognize I was tired of getting along, like going along to get along. That was just where I was going to, regardless of what happened, make different choices. So with that, because I alluded to it, Gabby, do show the audience, if you wouldn't mind, your
Yeah.
beautiful piece of neckwear, which is, it
Yeah.
reminds me of a sunflower.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, his name is Frederick. He definitely has his own personality, but this is 100-year-old lilac tree. He's actually a tree portal, and some people like to hug trees. I like to wear them or be inside them. So just a different take on it. But yeah, he keeps me grounded. Not only that, but also like joyful, playful stuff like that. Because we can get really stuck in our day-to-day lives of like things that we got to do, tasks that we got to do. So this reminds me to like reel it back in and get my creative side out. I do a lot of photography with him as well, and I'll go out different places and take like scenic shots through the tree portal and like kind of a viewpoint from a different angle. So a lot of fun stuff.
That leads me to a totally different question, but it ties in nicely to the work that you do with people, right? So you just shared that you're very creative and you tap into photography. I do the same. And also, like I shared with you guys before we went live, lately I've been on this kick of just cutting up my old shirts and recreating them and purposing them in a way that feels just fun for me. Yanko, what do you do as a creative outlet outside of playing with your son? Because I know when you have a little person around you, that's a naturally fun. But is there creative outlets that kind of fire you up and re-energize you when maybe you need to shake things up and remember that life's not, got to be so serious?
Yes, yes, yes. So I just appear to be serious, like just the face, and sometimes some people say that I'm just blank, like there's no nothing. But I guess when I'm like quiet inside, I'm not showing, like I'm not going like whoa or whatever. But I do like to take videos and photos from nature, and inspires me and put them together. And I've been experimenting with video editing lately. Also connecting things together and like adding different nature sounds to it. I'm having something that I'm almost ready to publish, but that takes a lot of time. And then I'm not in a rush because like maybe I've shared this with you before, or maybe I didn't. But when I was growing up, I graduated from music school, and my instrument in the music school was bagpipe, like the bagpipes, but
I didn't
Bulgarian
know
bagpipe.
that.
Cool.
Yeah. So And going through music and all that, it can be forced. A lot of the times, we'll have guests in the house, and my dad will like say, "Bring up the pipe and play something for us," and it feels forced. If you're not inspired, if there's no like the spark, it just feels mechanical. It doesn't feel like there is anything in it. So when I do that, I take my time. Like when I feel like I need to do it, then I do it, and it brings me joy, and then I stop. And I'm not rushing to get from point A to point B because I'm enjoying the experience, if that makes any sense. And maybe drawing, it's driving me like I picked up like ink drawing, and I'm doing like lettering and things like that. I'm like playing with different styles, different things. I don't know why. Maybe it's something that comes back from like previous times or something. But I have a feeling like, when you look in like old text and how they have like the lines art where they do like cathedrals and other things with lines, that's kind of like that picks up my attention now. Like I don't know if I'm gonna like do that as a something future thing, or if just gonna be like one of the many things that I do when I'm inspired to do them, if that makes
Mm.
any sense.
And you cook.
Oh,
I know you like to
And
cook.
I cook. Yes.
You cook.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I
Yes.
mean, going back to the topic, especially highlighting what it is you do. I mean, I think all three of us are energy healers are in our own right. We just have different language around how we show up and serve people. Gabby, how would you tie in the importance of creativity and imagination to our energetic health and emotional wellness? Because I did hear you mention both of those words
mhm.
in talking about working with your clients. And so I wonder if you can touch more upon how you view the importance of that and what role it plays in the wellness, overall wellness of people.
Yeah, like that's great question. Honestly, like a lot of us think of creativity, imagination as something for kids or something that I did as a kid. And it's quite honestly so important and vital for us to have that as adults. But again, society, conditioning, belief systems teach us otherwise. And it's in one of my so I do a couple other things. I do guided meditations as
Yeah.
well, and I also do speaker roles as well. And something I love talking about is, and the title is usually practice your imagination. It's essentially reeling back that creativity, because when we start to understand energy and we start to understand that our thoughts create our reality, you start to begin to understand that what you imagine does very often or all the time create your reality. And I know some people may not fully understand this, but when I explain this next part, it's going to make complete sense. But when you essentially if you say you're not a creative person, you don't use your imagination, that's a big fat lie. Because guess what? When we imagine, when we are having worst case scenario play out, or our biggest fears, or anything of that kind of vibration, right? What do? We literally imagine the worst case scenario, a very detailed picture of, like, you can even say the cicadas for now. Like, if you're afraid of the cicadas, you go outside, you're afraid of it landing on your head, guess what? It's probably going to land on your head. And you could probably imagine it happening before it actually happens, more than likely. So when we understand that our imagination, we do use it on a fear based quite often, or worst case scenario situation, you can start to understand that when you start to use your imagination in a more creative and more preferred outcome, you can literally play things out in ways that you just have not maybe even realized. And a lot of it comes down to, what is it that you want? Where do you want to go in life? How is that going to look like? How are you going to feel? How is that going to smell? How is it going to sound? Who's around you? All these things. A lot of us, again, aren't really taught this. But if you start to make a detailed picture of where you want to go, regardless of if you know exactly what that looks like. Maybe you just focus on the feelings. Maybe you just focus on who's around you. Maybe you focus on the joy that it brings you or helping others in whatever way that looks like. When you put it down on a detailed way, either through art, through a vision board, through writing, it doesn't really matter how. But when you start to get the details down, then what you can do is essentially follow the breadcrumbs of your higher mind to lead you to that place. How do we listen to the breadcrumbs of our higher mind? Well, it's really, really simple. Follow your highest excitement in every single decision you make. That is the breadcrumbs of your higher mind that is leading you to that imaginative creative space that you want. But the most important part is to let go of the expectation. So if you see yourself driving a red Ferrari in Miami, that's great. That really sounds fun and exciting. Awesome. But guess what? If it doesn't come out exactly like that, maybe you're in California, maybe you're driving a Tesla, whatever the outcome is, just know that outcome is going to bring you even more excitement than what you previously had imagined. So that's another really key aspect. But it all comes down to your creativity and the way you want to imagine your life going. And you can just transform your life in every single avenue.
I love that so much. There's a couple things that came to mind when you said that. I read many years ago, and I offer it to anybody who's looking for, quote unquote, the ability to tap into their creativity, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And the reason why is because she wrote it for artists, musicians, people in the creative space who were running into blocks. But it really is a 12-week process of tapping into your creativity. It's a self-help book that is packaged up as tapping into your creativity. And the second thing you said that I absolutely love, and I really want our community to hear this, is that you have to get clear on what it is you want. Yeah, and you don't even have to completely know. But if you're always focused on the things you don't want, you're creating more of the things you don't want. But if you stop to say, okay, I'm looking for this, right? And you get clear, there's a part of our brain, it's called the reticular activating system, that is going to get you to that thing. It can't not. But you have to start to get clarity around what it is you are looking for rather than focusing on the things you dislike. And I just had this conversation with a woman who kept telling me she's in her 40s, that she can't find the perfect partner. And I said, you absolutely can. The problem is you're focused on all the things you don't want in a partner rather than focusing on all the things you do want. And for anybody out there who doesn't know, I met my person at a gas station 40 minutes away from where I live, not even really having supposed to have met him because of the circumstances. And yet, because I had written down and clearly articulated these specific qualities and attributes I wanted in a life partner, fast forward a year later, I'm sitting reading a book and out pops Nana, and he and I have been riding ever since. And it continues to unfold into a beautiful expression of love. So I love everything that you said, and I really love getting clarity around it. I am big on visualization, whether it's visuals to remind you to remember when you're in a heightened emotional state, to pull yourself back into the now and then reset, or visuals that are going to help guide you to the experiences that you feel most called to have while having this experience as a human. So such good information, Gabby. I love it all.
Yes.
What
I
about
want
you,
to
Yanko?
add one thing to it. I want to add the following. Like, if you don't know if you really want something, you can go in and imagine it happen, and then imagine the next step after that, and then imagine the next step after that. And you might surprise yourself and find out that you really didn't want that. You wanted something else. You wanted maybe a feeling of something, like that example was with the car. Maybe you didn't want the car. Maybe you wanted the experience of, like, people, looking you driving a car or something else. So if you go with it and you're not really sure what you want, just go with it. Imagine it, see it, play it through, see how people are reacting around you, how people are seeing you. If that doesn't bring you joy, or if that's not something you want, then you can change it, and then that'll help you get the idea, like, and separate it from like maybe that's not what he wanted. And the reason I'm bringing this, it's because like I've done this myself many times when I'm like into getting something, like I want it like now or whatever, then I have to play it and say, okay, let's see how this plays out. Do I really need that? Like, what will happen if I have it? Then what will happen then? And then what will happen after that? And then I'll say, maybe I didn't really need that. Like, maybe I needed something else, or it gives me a better clarity on things,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
That's so well put. I love that so much. One other thing I want to highlight that I think is important, because I'll never forget when I first heard our thoughts create our reality. I'm like, holy crap, I'm screwed. Right? Because you're just like, oh, dang.
Same.
But the reality is, guys, we have time after a thought to choose a different thought. And the work that Gabby's doing, right, is she works with the emotional responses that people have to their thoughts. That's really the case, right? And so if you start to become aware of your thoughts and they don't feel good, instead of being afraid that, oh my god, this is going to create my reality, which that's where I was for a long time. I'm like, oh my god, I'm screwed. I realized, no, I just get to choose another thought. And the thoughts then culminate in that emotional response, in that joy, in that passion, in that inspired behavior, or in that sadness, in that depression, in that whatever. And so until you have that emotional response, you're good to be like, and I can't tell you how many times a day I have a thought and I laugh at myself and I'm like, well, that's just ridiculous. But because, our brains are going to think what they think. We've been conditioned since we were in utero, and even beforehand, if you believe in past lives. If you don't, just know, no matter what, you've been conditioned in utero. And with that knowledge, just knowing, you are going to have absurd thoughts. You just are. You're going to have thoughts that have been conditioned and embedded and ingrained in you. The practice is not attaching to them and then just making a different choice when you're aware of that thought is causing an emotional response that feels unaligned or doesn't feel good for you. So with that, Gabby, as we start to wrap up, I'm sitting here and I have a question that came to me. What is one thing you know now that you didn't even know a year ago that you would want to share with our community that has helped you experience more joy and just peace in your life?
That's a good question. I feel like every year I have a new word that I'll focus on. Last year was grace. So, like, just what we were talking about, like, if you have a negative thought, guess what? Be graceful with yourself. It's okay if you make mistakes. Just, well, it's like a piggy bank. Like, pay attention to where do you want to put your attention, right? So it's like currency. You get to put in like different piggy banks. So the more you put it into where you prefer, it doesn't matter if you're having those negative thoughts, whatever, but if you're having one that, you're focusing more on, that's where your attention's going to lead. That's where your brain patterns are going to start to follow. But this year's word is neutrality. So, and I don't think this is something we talk about enough. And I think it's like when you hear neutrality, you're like, oh, that sounds lame or boring or whatever. But it's so important. So, like, when we talk about neutrality, right? Again, like 3D kind of dimension talk is like good, evil, left, right, past, present, future. But when we talk about like 5D and 5D mentality, you're talking about positive, negative, and neutral. And so something to always remember is no matter when we are going through those dips in life, and none of us are even though we may have experienced a lot of joy in any of three of our experiences, we do go through challenges still. It's a constant process. And so what happens is when we dip down into that negative energy, right? And again, if you face it forward, it's only temporary. But when you go through that dip, the thing to look forward to is always know it's temporary. And there is that neutrality. That neutrality is right around the corner. And guess what? You go through that experience, you hit neutrality, and then you go back up, and then you have positive experience, and you go back down, you hit neutrality again. But neutrality is always the focal point of those two experiences. And the most important thing about neutrality is perspective. So when you are in a neutral state, when you look at your challenges or the hardships that you are in right now, and you say, I'm going to take away the bad, I'm going to take away the positive, I'm just going to look at it as if I was an outsider looking at my life, then pay attention to that perspective. Because if it was your best friend that was going through it, more than likely you're not going to tell them, oh, that sucks. You're going to get nowhere. That's going to be terrible, blah, 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 all the things that we tell ourselves. But if you take yourself out of that mentality, right, and you're in that neutral perspective, you're like, you know what, this doesn't have to be good or bad, but I can see that I'm here to learn something about this challenge, and that is very valuable information that I can take away, put that in my back pocket, and save that for later, because I know ultimately that's going to help me later in the future. So that to me is like the most important word for this year.
That's so good. I love it so, so much. This has been just such a gift, and I am so honored and privileged to meet you. Any final parting words on your behalf there, Yanko?
No, I was gonna say she put it so good, like, and that's pretty much the theme for this year, like neutral. I call it balance. That's, to me, it's balance, like where you're like right in the middle. You're not in the one side or the other side. You're like just kind of like
Tightrope.
in the now. Yes, you're
Yeah.
like in the moment. You're not like projecting in the future and the past, or and you're like just like, yes. So wonderful. I love it. It's just, and I love the question that Kerri brought in. It almost, it completed the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure our viewers are gonna really love that. And please share and connect with Gabby, connect with me, connect with Kerri. Send us your thoughts, questions. Sometimes we take questions and answers here on the lives. Um, Reach out to us. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like. Your feedback is very valuable to us. So we know how to go forward and serve you better and bring more information to you, our viewers.
Yeah, and ultimately, guys, that's what Yanko and I's mission is to be of service. So if there's any topics that we can touch upon, or if you really found Gabby's wisdom insightful, let us know. Gabby, you're always welcome to join us for every other, no particular reason. It's an open forum for anybody to join, so please do so. And with that, guys, deep gratitude and appreciation, lots of love, and wishes for a weekend filled with laughter.
Yes, thank you.